You're after something. Is it revenge? Money? Or is it something else? You look good. A little rough around the edges, but good.
Heard about a job. Big shot gangster putting together crew.
I'm a driver, and I'm a flyer. I waited a long time for a shot like this. What do you think? Well, what do you know?
Ahoy, me mates! Step aboard another episode of The Film Board from the next reel on rashpixel.fm. We spoil movies, and tonight we're testing the limits of our Star Wars vocabulary to explore everyone's favorite Corellian vessel and discover the history of the Han. Traveling solo. My name is JJ, and let me first just introduce you to our wonderful hosts. Here's the fun bunch. Say hello to the people. Pete Wright. That's fantastic.
I've been practicing with my dog.
I love it. Hello, Andy Nelson.
Hey, I am ready to start my own robot rebellion.
Hello, Steve Sarmento.
I'm here, and I think we can complete this podcast in under 12 parsecs.
Before we get started, please be sure to check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/thenextreel. We are asking for people to join us on our podcast journey by giving some love in the form of money, of course, to support this show and all of its film follies. We've got some new ideas for interaction with our content here and there and everywhere, and our hosts as well, and we want to share it with you. So check us out at Patreon and thug with us today. So let's jump right into Solo. People are calling out franchise fatigue here. How tired are you guys? Let's hear your initial thoughts. Steve, what'd you think?
Well, let me say, if I had taken time to contemplate the character of Han Solo and everything that I knew about him in preparation for having to write this film, I don't think I could have come up with anything different. This is, to me, the logical story that I would expect for everything I wanted out of a Han Solo story. It's, how do you get somebody as an orphan to develop into a man that would eventually become general for the rebellion, and have that told well? For me, it gave me everything that I was expecting.
Does he become general for the rebellion? General Solo?
General Solo, yeah.
He is General
By the time
Solo
we're
in
Jedi.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't pick up on it. See, that's what I'm thinking about here with this movie. There's so much with which to draw. So I'm really glad to hear that hit on some of those points for you, Steve. Well, what about you, Andy? What did you think?
I had a lot of fun with this movie. I didn't love it. I think they did a really good job of kind of creating this world with Han Solo, continuing the Star Wars world, and this period between between Empire or Episode 3 and Rogue One, where we kind of see a little bit of this story of him. I loved the elements that they created with the what were they? The Crimson Dawn. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
That group. It added to kind of these elements of the kind of the underworld that we've seen a number of times, like with the huts and stuff in some of the other films. But here we kind of get just a dark, seedy world that had some stuff that I thought was really exciting. So I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't love it, but I really had fun, and it certainly is something that would be fun to watch again.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point, too, because you talk about how this one is between Episode 3 and Rogue One. And what we've been told about these anthology films leading up to this is that they're going to be standalone films. But are we creating maybe a trilogy in the middle of the initial trilogies? I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to consider. How about you, Pete? What did you think of the show?
Well, I'm with the other guys. As much as I was trying to come up with a compelling part to play, that I really hated this movie. I was super critical of it. I can't do it. I had a wonderful time with this movie. My big criticism of the movie is not that is not that they sort of franchise fatigue. It was that it moved too fast. I wanted it to slow down and give me more of it. I enjoyed being in these new places. It felt like Star Wars. I found myself really disappointed when we actually saw a character using the Force, even though it was small, because I really liked this much more sort of grounded solo part of the Star Wars universe. I was pleased.
Who used the Force?
Darth Maul in the recording, I think. Doesn't he
yes.
uses the Force to bring his weirdo saber to his hand and then turn it on for zero reason whatsoever. Why do you turning it on? You're on a video call. Like you're on Skype. You don't need your light. Put your saber away, you idiot.
I do that all the time.
By the way, one of the things that everyone liked about my character was how cool my lightsaber was.
That's right. Let me remind you how awesome I am. And look, now my saber, did you notice the saber now has like handguard, like blade guards?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Important improvement from the original movie.
Right.
Maybe this would have kept me from being sliced in half.
Well, and I think, so Darth Maul's a great point there too. And I think, for me, I really liked this movie. What I liked about it most
wait a minute. I need to take a breath because I did not see that coming.
Really?
Really. I thought you were going to be the one who didn't like it.
No, I really, really liked it. And
I'm
what
so
I like
glad.
about it most is what they are doing to the whole Star Wars franchise, right? And honestly, I feel like they're taking this thing that's beloved by so many people and they're making it a scavenger hunt. I mean, that's really how it feels. I think a lot of people, I think there's going to be a lot of haters of this movie. I think they're going to say, this is unoriginal, or I think they're going to say X, Y, and Z about what people are just seeing derivative themes in this movie. But I didn't feel that way at all. I think they're doing a great homage to the original movies by taking the things that everybody liked so much, and then they're explaining them. And we're going to talk about a lot of them here today. Because, I mean, honestly, there's going to be ones that are going to be hits and there's going to be ones that are going to be misses for them. But for me, my favorite thing about the Phantom Menace, and people talk about the Phantom Menace pretty negatively in the whole canon of the Star Wars universe. But the thing that I liked was learning more about the story that I loved so much. And even if I didn't like the execution of what they did in the Phantom Menace, I was really happy to learn more about these characters and these stories that went so much into that original trilogy. And I think that's what they're doing here, is that they're taking this. And so I guess one of the things that I'd start out with about that point is this whole concept of the dice, right? The dice that when they showed up in The Last Jedi and they become this kind of focal point in The Last Jedi, everybody gets to remember them as this initial thing that was maybe shot as an accident with Lucas hung the dice evidently in the Millennium Falcon. I think you guys know the story. I don't know it, but in Last Jedi, I thought, this is kind of just a MacGuffin that they brought in. All of a sudden, it becomes central to the story about Han Solo. So now we're going to his backstory, but we're bringing it up, and it's now explaining these things that we used in the other movies. I think this is possibly a new concept and a new way to approach what could be looked at as a prequel or could be looked at by the haters as derivative, to say, this is that interesting thing that you had questions about before. Here's some answers. Did you guys feel that way about that? Did the dice work for you as something that was something to hang on to from earlier movies?
Well, I think the dice, I mean, it is a really nice touch. And it is something that has a lot more heft now, because before it seemed just like kind of a kitschy, 50s nod to the American graffiti era of car loving that George Lucas had by hanging the dice in the window, even if you never really saw them. But now it becomes a device that is passed from character to character and has a lot more heft and weight. And I think that's nice. And it's a tricky game, because it's always one of those finding the balance between, okay, you're going to give a little more backstory to the dice, but what about when now we've got to do the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs, and we're going to hit these things that they're going to be checking off, and that's always the danger zone of feeling like, okay, are they just feeling like they have to go back and check off all the different things to make sure, okay, now we've covered this from his past, we've covered this from his past, all those things we've talked about before, now we've covered it. But none of it bothered me. All the little elements, how he got the Millennium Falcon, just all these things that you have throughout that have been brought up in previous films. It just it was in there, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, of course we're gonna get to see him do the Kessel Run in under 12 parsecs and whatever it is. But it was nice. They handled it in a way in this film where I was like, they did a good job with it. So for me, as long as they're handling it in a way that feels like it's servicing the story, then I'm fine with it. I'm on board.
Yeah, I agree, and I think they treated everything with a lot of grace. They made sure that all that stuff didn't seem like it was done in a way that didn't mean to inform the audience. It didn't insult the audience in any way, especially if we start talking about parsecs. Well, right,
yeah.
because the idea of the quote from the initial movie is that we're saying that we're actually traveling some distance in less distance as opposed to less time.
There is a theory that George Lucas actually thought a parsec was a unit of time.
Right.
And not a unit of distance, and so it feels like there's had to have been a little bit of sort of retconned physics to actually make that work. And the whole idea, and actually, if we should put it in the show notes, friend of the show and resident scientist Ethan Siegel has written a wonderful post that actually attempts to demystify Einstein's relativity regarding parsecs and traveling the Kessel Run in under 12 of them, and it is it's actually a great way to sort of describe what giant gravity wells are at the center of spiral galaxies, and how it's actually they've created a thing that could be construed as sort of real space, even though we haven't been there, and he's made it kind of work to sort of, make it work in the movie, but they do an awful lot of hand waving. To have this canal with lights in it, this sort of tunnel. It's the Lincoln Tunnel of space, which is dubious.
Yeah, it is dubious, but I'm actually happy with the way they explained it. I mean, honestly, if Donald Glover and Lando and Han can get into this question of, can you do some distance in less than the distance that it actually is? They actually made like a third generation. Whether it was a mistake to begin with or not, they've creatively solved that with what we've seen here.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I loved about it. It was
I did too.
like I was like, oh, that's something they'll never be able to fix. But I was like, oh, they actually found a way to kind of work around that little gaffe that was in the original. I thought it was really clever.
I did too. I really did. I don't mean to sound all judgy. I actually thought it was a really fun sequence. Especially the big Imperial cruiser, mind you, when he comes out and there it is in the Lincoln Tunnel of space. I thought that was so beautiful. It was just a really gorgeous sequence.
It was great. Darth Maul, we already spoiled it a little bit, shows up in this movie. I wasn't spoiled coming in though, and I've always wanted more Darth Maul. Very excited to see him here. Now the speculation has begun. What does it mean for Darth Maul and Kira to be working closer together?
It really piqued my curiosity to see Darth Maul turn up in the end here. I've only partly made it through the Clone Wars, so I didn't realize that Darth Maul had not died after he fell down the well, cut in half. He managed to survive, and then he became he had a spider body for a while. And then his mother gave him new robot legs, which apparently, I guess that's, if we see him fully formed at some point, he's going to have the robot legs.
And you could see the robot feet in the Skype call.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah.
But then he went on to he was so miffed at Sidious and Dooku that he went on to create this crime syndicate. I can't remember what it's called.
They're called something. They're called the Dark...
The Shadow Collective. It was the Shadow Collective.
Yeah, that's right.
So he creates the Shadow Collective, which I guess, when it's a bunch of bad guys, it didn't last very long. And then I guess from there, he went on to create this Crimson Dawn. And, I don't know. I found it really interesting. And I love that they're actually now really taking stuff from the other things that are canon, like the Clone Wars and Rebels, and finding a way to integrate all of that stuff into the story here. So I think it's really clever.
Yeah, it caused problems for me because I have not been engaging with any of that other material. So for me, until I read about that information that you just explained about what happens to him after Phantom Menace, because as we were getting near the end of the film, I thought, okay, where does this fall in the timeline in terms of other films? Because I didn't have, there was nothing to really ground it in terms of other key moments in the Star Wars timeline that I was familiar with. So then when I get that, I thought, wait, what's going on, because does this mean everything that I'm seeing is prior to Phantom Menace? How old is Han? Wait, that doesn't make sense to me. So it wasn't until I read that, yes, there was, Darth Maul doesn't die in Phantom Menace, and there's all this other information to give me that context of, oh, okay, this gives me a different position in the timeline. So for me, it was a little disorienting because I didn't have that information. I thought it was an interesting, unexpected cameo, to sort of throw in there, but because I'm just not as fluent in Star Wars, chronology, it was a little confusing for me.
But is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I was in the same boat as you. Like, I had no idea that he was alive. And I'm like, well, that's so interesting. And it just, it made so many questions in my head. I'm like, well, then that he must be alive because there's no way this took place before episode 1. And so it just is. So I don't know. I found it kind of exciting because it led me down this rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yes, it did. And once so I wasn't like angry or frustrated. I just was like, okay, so either Han's age is not what I think it is, or he survived. What's more likely? Well, the fact that he's alive and is around. So then that raises more questions of, are there more stories to tell with him, or how is that going to play into some of these other, again, as Pete, said, we've got more. We're delving into this sort of other canon material outside of our main, Skywalker storyline. This has started to lead into some other tangential stories, which I'm excited about because it's opening the scope of the universe, of the stories that we can tell. And what I was really excited about with this particular film was what I saw in Solo was what we often talk about is exciting in the Marvel Cinematic Universe of tackling other genres. Because to me, what I was really excited about with this was it felt very much an homage to a lot of noir stories out of the mid 20th century. You've got a guy who's a veteran of the wars. You got a femme fatale. You've got, sort of the loner that's betrayed. There were so many, I thought, key sort of tropes from, noir detective stories that I could trace through this. I thought this is a great approach to take with this, rather than just, we're going to tell a Star Wars story. Let's pull again from some tropes and genres that are appropriate for this character and embrace that and really weave that into sort of the DNA of the story we're telling.
I agree. I agree on all those points. And I guess it's also part of my criticism because I feel like the pace of this movie is just pummeling, that I don't have enough time to really fall in love with each of the elements that they're giving me. Like, you bring up the war bit, he leaves and he goes to war, and then 3 years later he's on a battlefield. I feel like that's actually a story I'd be super interested in investing in, right? I'd be really invested in that story. The dice are they're great, and we see them sort of passed back and forth between Kira and him. They're clearly something that's important. We don't actually see where they came from. We don't see how he got them. We just see that they're somehow important. I would have loved to actually seen why they're important, apart from just being a sort of fetish object between the two of them. The gun was good. I liked how the gun was just sort of slid over there. The trusty DL-44, as Harrelson's character was kind of taking it apart. Then we get Chewie and the Falcon and his name. All of these things came in sort of the Han Solo checklist of the movie, and the pace was, it moved so quickly that I found myself at times both like torn in these two directions of, wait a minute, you guys, slow down and let me appreciate this, my favorite character in the universe. Let me appreciate it. Give me some more hero shots. Let me actually see, why don't you make use of this stupid escape pod that you've jammed in the nose of the Millennium Falcon and told us nothing about? Like, let's go ahead and see you see how this world manifests. My hunch is that this is a result of so many cooks in the kitchen making this movie. It felt in that regard a little bit scattered, and I know that I am apologizing in my own head for my feelings for what is not the level of just sort of production quality or narrative quality of some of the other films, as a result of my deep love of the characters and the actors they chose to play them. I think are fantastic. And so I don't know, does this resonate with anybody?
Yes. Yes, because
that's good. Okay.
No. Because the whole like sort of like Dickens-esque, street urchins, living a life of crime for their big overlord that's protecting them. I thought there was the potential for doing more of that story, but
that's
to me,
a whole movie in itself.
Exactly. And I, condense that fine. Okay. It was sort of like shorthand for, okay, he's a thief, but he's a thief with a heart of gold because he's got this girl. That was fine. We get the 3-year jump. And that's where my biggest issue is, because there he is in the trenches, encounters Woody Harrelson, Thandie Newton, and then he goes from being soldier who, is stuck in the trenches, which that's a whole different interesting experience altogether of that side of, the empire. But okay, I'm a soldier that isn't really happy because I don't take orders well. So I join up with this group of scoundrels and thieves. And then I'm looking at my time frame, and we go from, there's no big jumps of time. It's not like, oh, he's part of their gang for like a year. It goes from straight on the battlefield to we're doing this job, and then it's just boom, 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 boom. And there's so much growth or transformation in his character that happens over that I felt time was really compressed. It was too many cooks and a microwave to just compress time in this. And I thought he needed more time to change, and we get that transformation. There's a lot of things that go into making Han who he is, lots of betrayals and, making him who he is. But to me, I wanted more time for it to feel like that's the natural sort of emotional transformation a person would go over. From trench warfare to, on the beaches there at the end, how many days is that? There's not a good sense of time. It's
2.5.
It feels like days.
36
It feels
hours.
like it's me. Yeah. It with Lando and okay.
But I also, Steve, to that point, I compare this to Rogue One, and I've grown to like Rogue One even more over since it came out, and that is a film with about a singular mission, right, a singular experience,
right. Yeah.
And I think that in contrast to this is where this movie struggles. They're telling an awful lot of stories. Of pieces in the Han Solo checklist, and again, I like them all. I really do.
Yes.
The only thing I felt like they probably could have. They could have held off. I think they wasted an incredible hero moment. Is they shouldn't have given him the Falcon until the very last bit of the movie. They should have had him in a different ship. Have him win the ship from Lando as our reward for making it through this part of his life. I think that would have been cool. So I don't mean to armchair.
Well, that would have been cool, but then you'd be ignoring one of the major parts of.
Yeah, and you know what, JJ? That actually means we actually get to really invest in some of these other elements that were given short shrift.
I guess. See, and so now I would say, I understand why that resonates with you, Steve, and what you're talking about, Pete, but it's definitely not for me. This is not a spin-off movie. This is not a start of a solo franchise. What this is what they call an anthology movie, right? So they are literally picking up the greatest hits of Han Solo from all of the movies we've seen, and they're trying to hit on all of them. So I get why you guys might be looking for that, or that would be better for you. But for me, this was exactly what I wanted to see from this movie. I didn't need to spend much more time with what we had because I wanted the highlight reel of what his history was. It really, the pacing, you're right, the pacing was breakneck. But I liked this better than Rogue One in that it addressed so many of the things that I wanted to see the backstory of, and it hit on them and then moved on. And I didn't find that anything about this story was redundant. I felt like it did move through time. There weren't a whole lot of scenes that you could have pulled out and had the same movie. It developed over time. Again, it was very fast, and they put a lot into it. But I liked every little piece, and I would have been really sad if we didn't get Millennium Falcon throughout the whole movie. Definitely, that's something that I would want.
I really enjoyed all those parts too. The only thing that I didn't like was how he got his name. Like that element to me
was a groaner.
That felt super forced. That was
Really?
That was really rough for me. Everything else worked really effectively. I had no problems. I loved how he met Chewie. I thought that was just a really unique way, to see how Wookiees largely are abused across the galaxy. I mean, we see him chained as this beast in the basement that they throw people to get fed upon. And then later, when we're on the spice mines of Kessel, we see the Pike Syndicate abusing them there, and I thought that was great, and I loved all of that. It's just, man, the way that the guy comes up with his name, I was like, oh, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
But other than that, I loved him.
I get why you guys would think that was rough, but I cannot think of any other way that it would happen.
Just make his name Han
give him a
Solo.
name,
why
man.
did that have to be a thing? Why can't his last name have been Solo? It was so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. I liked it. I felt like it was exactly how that story should be told. I mean, how did we get our names coming through Ellis Island? Right.
That's
just
the
assigned us
heavy-handedness
names.
that I thought
Sure,
was too
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, he
Well,
might as
that-
well have said,
yeah.
"You're Han, traveling coach, Han Coach." That's we could have ended up with Han Coach,
Exactly.
Han Economy.
Well, so JJ, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I agree. It gave me all the story pieces I wanted. I just wanted a little bit more time. Like, Han joins up with that group, and maybe we go, it says like a year later, we get more time where he's built those relationships. You know, his really close bond with Chewie, you know, here's some guy, they just met each other, and, you know, I want more time to develop that trust. I want more time to have a sense that these relationships have, you know, been developed over time. Yes, I agree. It gave me everything that I wanted. I just felt like this time in which the story took place was far too compressed, and I thought there were opportunities to have some breaks in there to say, you know, as you say, an anthology. Okay, we've got this, and then we jump ahead 3 years. We've got this, we jump ahead. He's with that group pulling off heists and jobs for a year or two before they get to the really big one that is going to, you know, be the sort of starting point for the big, you know, sequence that we're going to have. I just felt like, to me, if I've just, you know, bonded with Chewie, and then all of a sudden it's maybe a day or two later, and now they're there on the planet with his people. There's all these other Wookiees, and he's like, no, I'm going with this guy that I've known for 2 days versus my people. I had trouble reconciling that choice for Chewbacca, who's out there saying, you know, I'm going on this because here's my people. I need to find them, but I'm going to leave them to go another way because this guy that I, you know, now trust more than anyone else. I just wanted more time.
Would it have worked for you then if there was another 3 years later, like after, if he and Chewie left with Woody Harrelson, with Beckett, and then it said 3 more years later, and then it comes back, you would have...
Yeah, even more time, just so I get a sense of they've developed some type of familiarity, that there's some bond or kinship, so that ultimately when Beckett betrays him, it's, you know, a betrayal of trust of a group that have worked together versus, yeah, you shouldn't expect to trust this guy, even though he tells you don't trust him. Yeah, why is that a betrayal? Because you've only known him a little while. You have no reason to trust him. So is it really a betrayal versus a crew that's worked together on several jobs? Then to me, that's more of a betrayal that's going to harden his heart to the point where, okay, his girl is leaving him. The sort of mentor that he's, you know, grown up under, that worked with, is betraying him. That gives me more reason for Han to become that isolated loner versus, well, yeah, a guy betrayed me, I had to shoot him, but I'd only known him for like 3 days.
Here's why it works for me. Because Han is not actually an isolated loner. And that's what this movie tells us. This movie tells us that when Beckett says to Han, if you come with me, you're in this life forever. And you get this perception of the character that he is this bad guy. But ultimately, Kira says to him, I may be the only one in the world who knows what you really are, right? That you're the good guy. And the reality is that we have this perception of Han from the early movies that he's only out for the money and that there's all these things. But what we learn through the original movies is that he's not. And what the beautiful thing about this story is that there aren't those 3 years where he developed being a criminal. He actually just fell into it. And he's always had his heart in the right place. He is the father of the rebellion. He's the one that made the choice to start the rebellion because it was the right thing to do. So that's why I love this so much, because I didn't need those other pieces of the story, because what I learned about Han in this movie is that Han was the good guy the whole time, and that everything else about him was perception and attitude and delivery and all those things. But it reconciles all of the turns that he makes eventually in the movie. So I totally get where you guys are coming from, especially when you talk about, if you want more weight to the story about who he is as a character. But I felt like it was a huge reveal about who he was as a character, to say he's not a bad guy. He's not a terrible smuggler. He's not a criminal. He fell into that life because he had to, and immediately he made the turn. So that's why I posed the question here for us in the notes. What does it mean to you about Han that he's actually the person that started the entire rebellion? The rebellion exists because of his choice here in this movie. I think that's huge. And that's potentially world-changing about the way that you view the entire franchise. Did it have that kind of effect on you guys at all?
Not on me, because I don't think I agree with it. I mean, the rebellion was already in motion. He just gave them some fuel. That's who those people were. Like, they and the aliens, that whole group, they were the rebellion before Han came along. He just sort of stumbled into it and happened to make the right decision based on who he is. And I totally agree with everything you're saying about his character. He's always the guy who has a reputation, but he's the thug who comes back to help, right? That's who he always comes back. We know that from the original trilogy. He always comes back. And so I just didn't get the weight of that decision. I thought it was a thing I was torn about, because I wanted this movie to be less tied in with the rebellion. I found myself sort of cringing when it became a rebellion story, because I just wanted the heist.
Well, I loved that. And I will tell you that the things that I loved about Rogue One were the connective tissue to the story like that too. If you want to talk about this movie being the detective movie and Rogue One being the war movie, the things that I love about it most are when these genres actually connect themselves to the rebellion. That's the stuff that I loved about both. And I felt like there was a lot more to love in that regard in this movie. And that was what made me really happy about it. Was there anything that they missed for you guys? Was there anything that on your Han Solo checklist, is there anything that you also wanted to know, or did they cover it all?
I don't think I had a list of things that I wanted to know. And if they didn't have all of these elements, like how did Han Solo, get the Millennium Falcon, like any of that stuff, I would have been fine if it wasn't even in the film. Like if it was just a story of Han and Chewie on an adventure, and they already had the Millennium Falcon, I would have been fine with it. The fact that they gave it to us as they did, I'm still fine with it. I thought it was fun. I don't run into those issues when it's like, oh, they felt they had to squeeze that in, unless, like I said earlier, it feels forced. It doesn't feel like it's actually connected to the story in any way. But I felt like everything was really connected here. So on the whole, I don't feel like I really missed anything. And I thought they actually had some nice little nods to the franchise. Little in jokes, like I loved the little "I hate you, I know" line between him and Lando. I was like, oh, that was a great little connection to the line that they have later. I just felt like they threw a lot of fun stuff in there, and so yeah, I mean, I didn't miss anything.
Well, and I just want to be, to be fair to myself, I said the Han Solo checklist. I didn't go in with a checklist, and I'm right with you, Andy. I think my impression that they had a Han Solo checklist was really a reflection on the pacing of the reveals of these particular elements. It came so hard and fast that it felt forced at times. So that's it. I'm with you. I would have been okay if they hadn't had anything that is missing. I don't know. I didn't go in expecting anything.
I didn't have any expectations. I knew that there were certain things that I was going to get. And because it's, for lack of a better term, an origin story. So I know there's things that we're going to see. There were things that were pleasant surprises. I mean, there's things like, okay, the chessboard on the Millennium Falcon. That's a nice thing because it's a familiar touchstone for everybody. But for me, the one that was most unexpected, to actually see Chewbacca rip someone's arms out of the sockets was surprisingly shocking for me because, yeah, it's one thing to mention it, but now I know why Han mentions it. Don't upset Wookiee, because he's seen that happen. He's speaking from experience. And I oh my gosh, just you hear that sound and here he is with these bloody stumps. I thought, wow, I didn't expect to see that in this movie. But to me, it's you learn a lot about Chewbacca. His loyalty from being saved out of those conditions, and just there was a lot about him that I think you get to appreciate, more than just a sidekick. You're getting more backstory and a little bit more about him. But yeah, wasn't expecting that brutal violence in a Star Wars movie. It's fine for lightsabers to sever things, but just the dangly bits of flesh from the limbs was surprising to see.
Excuse me. Get your presumptuous ass out of my seat. Oh, my sacral occipital circuit is sticking. You're gonna have to do that thing again later.
Yeah.
All right, course to Kessel is set. Plugging coordinates in now. Just keep your pinky on the yoke. Try not to mess anything up.
Whatever you say, my lady. Just let me know when you're ready to jump.
Ready and... ready.
My great surprise there was L3 and L3's relationship to Lando, and I should say Lando was immensely satisfying. We should talk more about that specifically, but the relationship to Lando between Lando and this droid was so satisfying, and the best gag in the movie is for my money, and the thing that caused our theater to bust up is when he says, "Can I get you anything?" And she says, "Equal rights," and he rolls his eyes. I mean, that had they paused the movie, it would have given people 5 minutes to laugh at the onion layers that you have to peel apart to get every nuance of that joke. It was so good.
L3 was the continuous source of laughter in my theater, and it was, of course, tragic when L3 died, but it was just, there were so many moments, like the other moment when L3 takes the restraining bolt off of that droid. And it was like, what should I do? And she's just like, I don't know, free all the others. And it creates this whole this robot rebellion. That was so funny, and it's so fantastic. And just the way that it played out in connection to the rest of the revolt and everything going on. It made for a really fun character. I really loved L3 and what they did. And this was something that I thought was pretty clever that I didn't completely catch. I saw somebody say it online that, okay, so L3, essentially they pull her, whatever it is, her brain module, and they stick it into the Millennium Falcon so that the Millennium Falcon can navigate through the Kessel Run. But what was interesting about that is, and I don't know if this is really a tie to Empire Strikes Back, but when C-3PO logs into the Millennium Falcon, says, I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it has the most peculiar dialect.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wonder if this was somehow a nod to the fact that now the Millennium Falcon's internal computer system is talking like L3.
There was a chat board that when this movie was announced, they were talking about the Millennium Falcon, or maybe it was when the first sort of leaked images of the Falcon were out, and they started talking about L3 and that L3 was going to be a partner to Lando. There was a link to one of the novels that actually talks about exactly this, that L3 becomes the brain of the Millennium Falcon, and that there was great hubbub about whether or not they were going to actually take this, which is technically out of canon, I think, and put it into this movie and essentially shoehorn it into canon. I thought it was a wonderful touch.
Well, and now the L3 is voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge is that and I was thinking the whole time that it was actually Gwendolyn Christie.
It sounded just like
and I was expecting some switch that somehow L3 was going to become Captain Phasma, because similar to how I felt about Darth Maul, when we learn in The Last Jedi that Captain Phasma has a demise that lasted 2 films or whatnot. Her story was very short. I thought there's got to be something more to her character as well. So I was thinking, oh wow, that could be great. But I think it's fantastic that now the Millennium Falcon is actually L3 too. I think, and now you talk about the ownership of the Millennium Falcon as it goes through, and Lando's relationship with the ship, and Han's. There's so much to it just with that simple addition of that character. I think that's really special.
Hey, her name is the droid's full name is L337. I did not catch that. It's Leet.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
It's also the same if you flip it over.
Oh, exactly. So good.
Well, let's talk about other people in the cast. I think it's really important for us to address Alden Ehrenreich and his take on young Harrison Ford here. I was satisfied with it. I see a lot of people talking badly about his performance here and how it does not match.
The seat taken?
Nobody's in the seat, then it ain't taken, friend.
So this is Sabak?
Sabak.
Sabak. Got it.
You played before?
A couple times, yeah.
Captain Lando Calrissian.
Han Solo. Looks like you're having a good day.
I'm a lucky guy.
Can I ask you a question, Captain Calrissian?
Anything, Han?
It's Han, but that's okay. I heard a story about you. I was wondering if it's true.
Everything you've heard about me is true.
Did you guys have any problem with the way that he brought Han to the screen?
Yeah, I didn't love him, but I didn't hate him. I thought he was fine. I was like, he's no Harrison Ford from 1977, but who is, and that's the challenge. Is I don't know who they would have found to really pull it off. I think he does a well enough job of making it work, and I think he lives in the skin and makes it work. I don't know. I guess I enjoyed him, and I didn't really have a problem. I just didn't love him.
Yeah, I think it's tough shoes to fill because you don't want to do a Harrison Ford impersonation. You have to make this character your own, and there's so many challenges to stepping into such a popular and well-known role, and I think that it's a big ask for an actor, but to me, I think tonally it fit. As I said, this delivered in every way that I expected and hoped for. It gave me what I wanted, and that goes for his performance as well. I think there's a lot of challenges that he was facing, but for me, I'm not going to put these two side by side and say, oh, there's inconsistencies between how this character is portrayed. For this story, I think who Han Solo is at this time in his life. And it worked very consistently for me because what I see is the end of this film. But you've got, Lando losing L3. You've got multiple betrayals. There's a big shift in who he is at the end of this film. I mean, he's going to go out and he's going to pursue this life as a smuggler. So he's still this guy with this that wants to do the right thing. And that's always consistent with his character. But I think there's a tremendous loss that he is continually faced with at the end of this film that is going to be, it's going to have an impact on a guy. So for me, that's enough for me to say he was this person. He's going to, over the next few years, become who we see in A New Hope. And I don't have any issues or problems with that.
Well, he clearly had the most difficult job of any of the actors here because everyone else in the film is actually playing someone new. Woody Harrelson.
Almost everyone.
Who else were you talking about?
Chewbacca.
He was Chewie in The Last Jedi.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, he's been Chewie. Yeah, this is his fourth time if you count the video game.
Well, he was the voice in the video game. He was the double in The Force Awakens. But in terms of being the solo Chewbacca, this is his second full run.
Yeah.
Well, and we should also talk about Donald Glover. I skipped over that real quickly, but him doing the Billy D. Williams, I thought he wasn't doing an impersonation, and I thought that was he nailed Lando.
He was brilliant. He was one of my favorite parts of the film. I had such joy in watching this extra meat of Lando that we never really got to see before. And I mean, it's just great. And I think Donald Glover really was like a perfect person. I mean, I may have had some hesitation with Alden as Han, but when it comes to Donald Glover as Lando, I mean, just spot on perfect. Everything that he did was exactly what it should have been. I loved it.
Yeah, I actually felt that way about both of them. I think I'm the most bullish on Alden, too. I thought he nailed it. I mean, he just crushed it to my eye. I felt like I was every bit in the movie with the young Han Solo. And same thing with Lando. Everything you heard about me is true. I mean, it was just perfect, pitch perfect every time. Even up to their last scene, which I don't know. I worried a little bit in the last, gambling, the last hand, when he comes out and he knows he's been had because he left the guys on this planet. Lando knows he's been had, he's been found, the guys are mad, and I felt like we got a little bit too much of the early sort of I don't know, simpering Lando kind of sneaks in, and I didn't want that. I feel like the rest of the movie was too good for that. So, but other than that, he was fantastic.
For the other folks in the film, Woody Harrelson comes in as Beckett. Woody, I like most of the things he does. This character didn't need a whole lot from me on it. I was happy with what he was doing. He felt like a smuggler to me. You guys?
When is Woody not great? I mean, he's such a great actor, and he works brilliantly. Whether he's a sheriff or a porn king or a smuggler. I mean, he's just a fantastic actor, and he really was great here.
Steve, I thought you were going to say 999 there.
Woody Harrelson is like in this golden era. I mean, you think about, okay, you go back 10 years and you look at the films he's been in, the franchises he's been in, the accolades he's been getting. This morning on the Saturday matinee, we talked about Zombieland, and that's like 10 years ago. And that was sort of like, oh yeah, that's Woody Harrelson. He does these little things, but he's just gone on to become like, he's got such, I don't know, respect and weight. And he just, now if he's in something, he's just hit his stride. And yeah, I think it was a perfect casting. He handled it that's exactly what I expect. And what was really rewarding for me is he plays that scoundrel that you can't trust, and that just delivers it so well. I thought there's, and then you've got, what he's in the Apes franchise. I mean, he's all over the place, covering a range of different characters, but always delivers the performance that is deserved for that role.
I didn't realize he's also in Venom coming out later this year.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
Man.
He's everywhere.
He's working.
Yeah.
Likes to work. Amelia Clarke, I've been hearing her described as the space Khaleesi for this role. I find her compelling in everything she does, and she's a natural brunette. I thought she looked great. I thought she did really well in this role. I was really happy with Kira the whole way through.
I hope you're not including Terminator Genesis.
I was just going to say that.
I've never seen Terminator Genesis.
Oh, so terrible.
But I'm with you, man. I thought she was great. I thought she was fantastic. And I found myself so heartbroken in, I think, just the right way at the end. I was mad. I was so mad when she brought up Skype because I felt totally betrayed. I was like, the movie has totally let me down. And then I stopped. I said, that's a good thing. All right, I can take it.
Like what Steve was saying earlier, it had that nice noir vibe where she kind of is that femme fatale. And I found it so interesting, this whole thing where she kind of had become, she escaped from her, prison life before, which I found really fascinating with the giant water snake creature kind of ruling over everybody. I loved that. And then she escaped that to become part of the Crimson Dawn. And who knows, as they kept saying, what dark stuff that she's had to do to get to where she is. And she knew that she could never leave it. And I loved that femme fatale element of her character. And I thought she handled it really well. And watching that last bit, I thought was just really touching. A lot of nice subtext I thought she had.
So nobody took my bait on that. But so the speculation online that I've been reading about the line that Darth Maul gives her, saying that they're going to work together very closely, is that they think that Kira and Darth Maul are going to be the parentage for Rey.
No.
Not
even a little bit.
Those online people are idiots.
They're idiots.
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
You don't like that?
Well, they handled it in the last film, I thought. It'd be like all of a sudden they'd have to come up with a new reason.
Believe the guy who's aligning himself with the dark side that, he's telling the truth. So crazy.
No, I think to me, her character worked so well in the noir sort of femme fatale. I mean, there's so many times she's telling, she's like, there's things I know that you don't know. And, she tells him it's all about staying in this game the longest you can. I mean, she's telling him, dropping so many clues that, she's not who he remembers her to be. And she's got a bigger plan. And there's that, I guess she just almost, I guess I want to say pity that she has for him, of like, he's so like earnest and wanting to be the guy to do the right thing. And she's just like, You don't know who I am anymore, and you're in so far deep on things you have no idea, and I think it hurts her to hurt him, but that's who she is now. And to me, it followed through so well. I have to say, this film delivered and avoided for me one of the biggest pitfalls of when you start to get into scoundrels, thieves, and betrayal and cons, because we have a scene where Han is explaining his big plan to Beckett, and then we cut away, and then we come back, and Beckett's like, okay, but there are so many ways that could go wrong. And then when we get to the big, we're gonna do the delivery, but we've got some plan. And then Beckett shows up, and I thought to myself, oh, please let this not be the stereotypical, I'm pretending to betray you, but I'm not really betraying you because it's part of our bigger plan.
Right, the sting.
The sting. I was so relieved that it didn't go that way, because that is just a big pet peeve of mine, because it depends on us, the audience, believing that Beckett and Han, in addition to being thieves and scoundrels, are also tremendous actors that can just play a scene really well. I'm like, no. The fact that Beckett was truly betraying him and calls Han out and said, look, I told you not to trust anybody. To me, just rings so much truer to the type of story and who these characters are, that I breathed a great sigh of relief that everything was played straight. It wasn't we're tricking you audience into something, that was played straight, because it just felt more honest and true to who these people were.
Well, plus it allowed for a great finale between the two of them when Han shoots first, right? It has that whole moment when you have Beckett starting to kind of spin his story again, and then Han just blasts him. I was like, oh, that was brilliant. That was a great way to end that.
There are a lot of other great actors in this movie too. One that I wanted to bring up was the performance of Rio, the smuggler, the cruise pilot, multi-armed, multi-legged guy. That was played by Jon Favreau, which I thought was. I actually really liked the character. I thought it was played a little bit too much like Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy, though.
Oh, I didn't think that at all. I didn't.
Cool.
They didn't have the same personality at all.
Oh.
I liked him. I thought he was nice. He was a nice fit in there. I didn't love him, but I thought he was fine. I was surprised to see Jon Favreau, because I didn't place his voice at all with that character, and so when I saw his name pop up in the credits, it was a little bit of a nice surprise.
I'm with you. I was surprised to see Jon Favreau in the same movie again here with Paul Bettany. I just watched Iron Man, and so seeing these voices or hearing the voices side by side, where it was funny. Any of the other, Paul Bettany you mentioned, any of the other actors you want to bring up in terms of their performance? Tandy Newton I thought was great. I'm having a renaissance with Tandy Newton because I'm just now getting into Westworld. I know I'm late on that, but I think her best work of her career is in Westworld. Yeah. So I'm a much bigger fan of hers today than I was even a year ago. Totally agree. I thought she was great, and she was gone too soon. But I liked the way I loved the train sequence. I thought the train heist was terrific, and I thought she took a good way out. Most of the chase scenes in this movie were really special in terms of the way they were shot. There were some great motion, moving camera shots that I was really happy with. The way that the camera revealed things when they were in motion, I thought was very special and very different than I had expected from this movie. Yeah, I had, to me, when we have, as Pete mentioned, the whole train sort of, again, we're going back to sort of our tropes out of it's sort of the Western, train robbery. When you're watching that, and then to realize, okay, well, this was all shot basically. I mean, none of this is there. It's all computed in, which gives, we always come back to, when you can place the camera anywhere, are you always picking the best place to put it, and how are we oriented and everything? And to me, this was one where I always had a great sense of geography and space. There's so many things going on, so many places we are. Love the whole dynamic of as it goes around those tight turns, that everything is tilting and leaning. The physics of that, in the back of my mind, I thought, I sure hope this is a ride at Disney, because I would be loving to ride this as a ride at Disney. But yeah, no, visually, this, to me, the early part of the film, it may have just been the theater I was in or something. It seemed the colors were a lot more muted, and the images were a lot more dark. In the early, sort of scenes with Han sort of in the streets and the alleys, everything seemed really dark and
not a lot of color. Everything's really muted. Then later on, to me, things just brightened up a lot. And it just may have been my theater that just wasn't, projected in those early scenes. That was my only issue sort of visually with this. And that may have been a decision that, they made to, here's the grimy, dark, seedy underbelly of the city where they're trying to escape from. But that was the only real issue I had. I saw it on a Limax screen. So, big images, everything worked really well. That was probably, I think, visually the only, issues I had.
I was just going to throw out a few other people that I thought were worth nodding or throwing nods to. It was nice seeing Warwick Davis pop up again in the Star Wars movie as one of the rebels. And apparently Anthony Daniels is in the film. He plays somebody named Tack. I don't know who Tack was, but yes, Anthony Daniels is credited as Tack in there. And of course, since Ron Howard ended up taking over director duties, he of course has to get his brother in, as he always does. Clint Howard comes in as Ralakili. And then it was great seeing Ray Park back in as Darth Maul, and Sam Witwer, who does the voice work for Maul in all the animated series. He did the voice for Maul. So it was nice to see all those people involved still.
What did you guys think about the music? I thought that touching on the old themes was a little bit, wasn't nearly as wonderfully sweeping as I've heard from some of the other new movies. For example, when we see the Millennium Falcon in Force Awakens and we hear that theme, it's just so wonderful and, brings me goosebumps. I didn't really catch that when I got any of the old themes in this. They felt a little bit, heavy, not really connecting to the nostalgia that I wanted.
I thought John Powell actually handled it pretty well. I do feel like I thought Michael Giacchino may have tapped into the Star Wars mythos a little more strongly in Rogue One. But, John Powell's a composer who I think does some really great work. And so I was pretty happy with it, even if it wasn't quite as strong as some of the others.
But there were some nice touches to it. I feel like when I heard the original themes, I think you're right, JJ. They were not quite so connected to those big hero moments, but I also think it had something of an identity of its own. It veered a little bit too much to the themeless, like so many themes that you can't really tell what the themes are. I need to listen to it without the movie because, so many of the other scores are eminently listenable. And I walked out, there was nothing really I felt to hum.
Well, that's the struggle with John Williams. I mean, he was so good at creating all those leitmotifs for everything. Like every single character had their own little theme, and he was able to weave them together so nicely. And I don't feel that John Powell really tapped into that as well as he should have for a Star Wars film. I feel like when you're in that John Williams score world of the Star Wars films, you really need to build those leitmotifs in and come up with really memorable themes for everyththing. Like Lando should have had a theme. L3 should have had a theme.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a challenge for anyone who's approaching a Star Wars movie now, right? Because, John Powell does that really well in some of his other stuff. I think his score for How to Train Your Dragon is one of my favorites. It's extremely memorable. But in general, like how to jump in with this where there's already so much established, it's a completely different challenge for a composer, I think.
Hey, what did you guys think of the opening credits? I feel like I can't remember how they did it in Rogue One, but there was no opening. Obviously no opening crawl because it's a Star Wars story, but they did have some things they had to tell us. And instead of doing the crawl, they did the slow grow of a couple of lines of text on 3 or 4 screens. What did you think of that?
I didn't mind it.
Okay.
I thought it was fine.
Okay. I guess I did too. It just felt weird.
Yeah, especially with when you've got a film that's already over 2 hours, and is there a better way to get that information across, or is your story already so overstuffed that you can't find a way to get this exposition in there, or what's necessary to tell that you can't show us through the world you're giving us? And I guess, I was sort of in the same boat where I thought, okay, I know there's no opening crawl. I think it was interesting because I'm trying to remember how it starts, because it was, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It was a time of like scoundrels or something. And I thought, okay, well, that was nice. But then it started to give us more and more. And I didn't need that much. Give me 1 or 2 lines and then let's get into it, and everything else, show me through
Yeah.
your storytelling. I don't need that much.
And I think it is telling that we don't remember what they actually said. Did we really need it at all? And in fact, Rogue
Right.
One, I'm watching it right now. Rogue One has there is beyond Galaxy Far, Far Away. There's nothing. It goes straight to a hard smash cut to the planet.
And what it makes me wish is that they hadn't established that the anthology movies wouldn't use the crawl, because if they would have just made it consistent, then we wouldn't necessarily complain about it. But now it feels like a weird thing to insert in. I will say that one of the big problems I had with this movie is the way that they handled exposition at any time. Early in the movie, when Han shows up to Kira and has smuggled his piece of this amazing energy, and they have the conversation about what it means to have this. They have it in a thing where they're like saying lines, and then the other one's explaining it, and it goes back and forth. You know, we have this money, we have enough to buy our way off the mountain. It sounds like they're doing some old musical in the way they're doing it. And they did the same thing with Chewbacca when we first meet Chewbacca. Instead of giving us his lines and subtitles when the characters can understand it, they have Han repeat basically what Chewie said in English every time. Stuff like that, it felt like really unfortunate writing for the dialogue. What you're talking about these beginning screens is kind of another thing where they just couldn't figure out how to do exposition in a way that was graceful with the rest of the movie.
I also have no sense of the economy. It's like, oh, this is like, 500 credits or 800 credits. And I thought,
right.
Well, how much is that? Is that a month's wages, a year's wages?
Well, that's 60 million credits. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know what is in between there.
Right. Yes.
I think a lot of that comes out of the Phil Lord, Chris Miller nonsense, as as they had these creative differences and a script that was rumored to be unworkable. And I mean, it's just this just feels to me like the rubbish that is left in from what we talked about, just the production struggles that they had to get this thing out the door.
That's how it feels too. And acknowledging that, I think they've done an amazing job with this film to bring it out and to make it satisfying to those of us, which are all four of us here, who care a lot about the original universe. There are going to be a lot of haters of this movie, but in general, they did a great job of tying these things together to satisfy people and the different things that they wanted to know about Han Solo.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. To get back to the question you asked in the very beginning, I don't know, maybe to attempt to circle back to that is do we have franchise fatigue? And speaking only for myself, I absolutely don't. Me
neither.
I am just as excited on the announcement that they're looking at doing the Boba Fett movie, and that there's potential for a Lando movie, and I'm in for all of those. I love Star Wars. I'll take them in the summer during blockbuster season. I'll take them during December, where Star Wars owns December, whatever. I'll take them whenever. I love Star Wars movies. I'll enjoy them.
This movie was the turning point the opposite way for me, where there's so many people who are, out there saying that, nothing's original anymore. And I feel like I really do like seeing original stories too, but the way they told this story felt original to me because it was utilizing the things that I wanted to know more about, and it kind of exploded those a little bit. Right? It brought those up, and it told me the stories of the things that I wanted to know from this original story. We've got the Star Wars universe. We've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've got the Harry Potter universe now going into the Fantastic Beasts thing. These are things that I liked the original of. So I'm going to stop being a hater of telling these additional stories for these universes that I liked in the first place, because the reality is I like finding out about them. And I'm like you, Pete. I'm in for Boba Fett. I'm in for Obi-Wan if they do it. I'm ready. I want to know about these things, and now I have a belief that they're going to tell them in ways that are interesting and fun to watch.
Totally agree.
Hey, real quick, I do need to go back real quick to a point that was brought up earlier, because I was just looking around online. And I realized, and I knew this and I had forgotten, that the reason that Chewbacca stays with Han Solo is because when Han Solo frees him from slavery, Chewbacca views that as a life debt. And he stays with Han Solo because of this life debt that he has, that he freed him from slavery. And that is something that was back in the kind of way back. I can't remember when that first came out. I think it was in some of the novels, if I remember, but it's something that they've kind of kept where Chewie has this life debt to Han, and that's why he stays with him. So
okay,
there's that.
I buy that. All right. Well, now that we've reconciled all of our life debts, I think it's time that we rank it. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
All you people listening along with us, check out www.flickchart.com to try out what we're going to do right here. The site provides a fun way to look at the movies that you've seen by creating a tournament-style stack ranking system that organizes movies of your choice as they duke it out for king of that movie mountain. The movies we've talked about on this show can be seen ranked at flickchart.com/TNR Filmboard. Where do we start with Solo, A Star Wars Story?
Hopefully this will be an easy choice for everybody. Solo, A Star Wars Story, or The Mummy.
Solo.
Wow. Okay.
Gross.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
easy.
Solo.
Yeah, Solo.
The Mummy is in the middle for us?
That shocks me that, yes, it is. I don't know how it ended up there, but I think some people picked it over Batman versus Superman.
That makes sense.
Solo or Beirut? Easily Solo for me.
Solo.
Yes, Solo.
Solo.
Solo or Get Out? I'm going to say Get Out.
I'm going to say Get Out.
Really?
I still haven't seen it, so we're
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Really?
Oh,
We're gonna
okay.
end up
Oh, well,
going
sure.
Get Out.
Then it's going to go Get Out. Yeah, so that's fine. Yeah.
Solo or The Martian? Solo for me.
Solo.
I love me some Matt Damon science. Yeah, I'm gonna science it.
Pete, it's hanging on you.
No, I'm the Martian. No, it's
Okay.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're both the Martian.
Pete and Andy, do that Rochambeau.
All right, here we go.
All right,
Ready?
Pete, ready?
1,
2,
2, 3.
Paper.
Rock. Oh,
Solo wins it.
suck it, Rock. You failed me again.
Solo or Split?
Solo.
Split.
Solo.
I'm going to go Split.
Okay, wait.
I'm really torn on this one.
Yeah, there's something about
I'm
Split. Yeah.
split on this one.
but
But at least I'm not Solo.
Okay, so it's me and Steve this
God.
time. Steve, you ready?
1, 2, 3. Paper.
Scissors. Solo wins.
Okay.
You guys are terrible at Rochambeau.
They're
Yeah.
so slow.
They're so slow.
All right, well, that does it. Solo lands at number 10. 10
Nice.
out of 70. So
Love it.
it did a good job there. Smack dab between Get Out and Split. So there it is.
That's good.
How far to the next Star Wars movie?
Well, the very top, the top Star Wars film is Star Wars: Last Jedi at number 2. Star Wars: The Force Awakens at number 3. Solo at 10, and Rogue One at 17.
See, that's the thing, that had those come up against one another, where would you have ranked it?
It would be below Rogue One for me.
Yeah, Rogue One is at the bottom for me. So Force Awakens is my top, then Solo, then Last Jedi, then Rogue One. That's mine.
I think everything's fine, but I would switch those two in my personal ranking. Is that Rogue One would be ahead of Solo right now. I need to see it again. That's in a tough place.
What about you, Steve?
I think the way it is on our chart is the way I would rank them.
My letterbox ranking for Solo is a 3.5 and a like.
I'm gonna go 4 stars and a like.
You're supposed to say, I'll see you 3.5 stars and raise you half a star.
In Sabak.
I'm 3.5 and a like also.
I'm 3.5 and a like.
Next month is June, and we are fully in summer swing. We are going to be doing on the film board Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. So we're still staying with the franchise thing. I know there's a lot of dinosaur lovers here on this show. That'll be kind of fun. And then now for the main show, TNR, you guys are doing the Oceans series?
It's the Living Seas. Yes, we're doing. It's a documentary
Disney's
series. We're
The
going to do
Living
all
Seas.
of Disney's The Living Seas. Yeah, we're kicking off the Oceans series, and we're going to do the whole thing. We're doing. We're starting off with the what was it, 1960 Sinatra
Oh,
Oceans,
cool.
and then we're going to do the Oceans 11, 12, and 13, and then we're going to wrap it up with Oceans 8. So we're starting a fun series here of Vegas heist movies.
That's
Looking
awesome.
forward to
The
it. Yeah.
Modern Ocean series is one of my all-time faves. And of course, it's Soderbergh, so I'm super excited about that.
I know. I'm with you. Andy's such a buzzkill between you and me. I know he's going to be real trouble.
That's cool. That's good. We'll get
I'm
some
looking
balance.
forward to talking about it.
Well, and we're going to try to be a little bit more agile with the way that we plan our film board content here, and we need some more patrons signed up to bring the power to you people out there in the audience. So remember to check out our page at patreon.com/thenextreel for updated reward tiers and some promotional campaigns, and send you all your film folks there to join us and join our conversation. Also, elsewhere on the web, you can find out about this show and its sibling shows at thenextreel.com, and we're also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at The Next Reel. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Say goodnight, Peter Wright. See you later, Andy Nelson.
Equal rights.
Talk to you soon, Steve Sarmento.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Sleep tight, you beautiful listeners. We so appreciate your wonderful ears. Join us again soon, because at the next reel, when the movie ends, our conversation begins. Till next.